Hello everyone and a very warm welcome. I'm Ann-Christin Pöppler. I'm a professor of organic structural chemistry and currently teaching an elective bachelor's degree module on green and sustainable chemistry. First of all, before starting, I would like to send out a massive thank you to the VuDive team who provided the podcast equipment for this podcast, but also all the other ones recorded as part of the module on green and sustainable organic chemistry. This episode is all about the pathway to become a more sustainable laboratory. And for that, I will be interviewing two colleagues, asking them about the why, the when, and the how of their process. Enjoy the interview. This is my first time serving as a podcast host, but more importantly, I have two absolutely wonderful guests today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Denitsa Docheva. I'm the chair of the Department of Musculoskeletal Tissue Regeneration. By background, I'm biologist and chemist, but mostly I focus on the biology side in the musculoskeletal system area.
And hello, my name is Girish Pattappa. I'm a senior scientist, and actually for the topic of this podcast, I am the Laboratory Green Lab Officer.
So thanks for joining me today. The cool thing, you already mentioned the Green Lab Officer, is that they not just only have a Green Lab Officer, but they lead the very first orthopedic research lab in Germany with a certification within the My Green Lab program. So welcome, both of you, and thank you so much for joining me on this adventure today.
Anne, first names are fine, right? Before we begin, we would like to compliment you for building up the course on sustainable organic chemistry. We are very thrilled to be here today and participate in our first podcast, and frankly, we're a little bit nervous.
Same here. Okay, so when I started looking into the My Green Lab, I found that it's a non-profit organization doing sustainability consulting and also offering a globally recognized certification, the Green Lab certification. So what were your starting points to invest in sustainable lab practices and aim for this certification in the first place?
All right, how it all began. Actually, in the hospital, König Ludwighaus, where our department is located, the orthopedic chair, Professor Maximilian Rudert, was very interested of what is the impact of orthopedic surgical intervention on the climate. And in the hospital, with the leadership of Professor Rudert and Dr. Nette Eidman, there was a study on exact data of the impact of orthopedics on the climate. And following to that, we organized at the Congress of the German Society for Orthopedic and Trauma Surgery in October in Berlin 2023 with about 8,000 participants, a symposium dedicated to sustainable orthopedics and orthopedic research. In the frame of this symposium, I met Professor Una Fitzgerald from Ireland, who was the first to certify her lab in the country. And that is where I've heard for the first time the Green Lab initiative. Supported by the Vice President, Professor Shlomo Kemper, we then decided to enter in the process.
So after this initial contact with the certification, when did you start the certification process in your lab and which steps were involved in the process?
So I got the contact to the Green Lab and I was mentored by a team member, Jake O'Grady. And first we had a telco to just understand what it takes. Following to that telco, we had a dedicated meeting in our department to pass the information to the team members. In fact, there are two main steps. This is the initial survey, which estimates the status quo of the laboratory as it is. And then, after a period of time to implement necessary changes, there is a second survey. And more details of what is within this survey you would hear from Girish Pattappa. So we did the analysis of the status quo at the beginning of 2024, and our results were published in April. And we were very happy to see that already at the beginning our level was at the gold. So in this certification, the levels, let's say gold, platinum, and the highest in this case is green level.
That's great. I have one mini question. If you say that there was an initial survey, so what is the minimum participation in your institution that you need to have?
A very good question. So the analyses are based on trust. And then the mentor from the Green Lab organization, they want to know how many members are in your unit. And then you can't force people. It's based on trust and based on motivation of the team. So you have to have a really at least 80% of your team members voluntarily participating in the survey. And it's set in this way that it's anonymous, but they could see how many from the department in quarter is participating to be a representative result. Every member takes the survey on their own. They cannot be cross influences, and the survey has to be closed in one session.
Now, following up from that first survey, we actually got specific criteria that we could improve upon. So it's not just it's looking both at the answers of the survey, and also the My Green Lab organization provides inputs where we could further improve upon. So we can work on things over time. So this next survey took place approximately 15 months after the first survey in February 2025. And from that, what we had to do in the period between was to improve the way our initial starting level of gold and see which point of a final certification we can reach. To be part of this, there are specific ways in which we could improve. And the way we did this was, firstly, to appoint a specific Green Lab officer, which is myself, which helped enhance our community interactions. So one of the topic areas within the My Green Lab survey is community, how you communicate within your team, but also to the outer world, as we are doing today on this podcast. Additionally, we also did a waste management check where we looked at our resources and how we placed them into different bins. So we began to use plastic bottle boxes, which meant any PBS or serum or media plasticware we can put into a box from PA Biotech. I am not advertising them, but there are other companies that do this, which we can then be sent back to them and then recycled for new refilling. For instance, we also begun to significantly reduce our plasticware. For example, instead of using plastic pipettes for cell culture, we use glass pipettes. It's a bit more onerous, but you're saving a lot of energy and environment by reducing your plasticware and using refillable tilt boxes. In terms of transportation or ordering, we began to use a specific spreadsheet, which people could look as an inventory, but we could also consolidate orders from one company, therefore reducing transport emissions to the end user, which is ourselves. And also we began to autoclave and dishwash things in when it's full rather than in bits and pieces over a week. So we're saving a lot of energy through that. We also started using ACT labels on products when we could find them in specific companies, which I'll explain later. But one area which we could further improve upon, but we implemented after the survey, was to use, instead of -80 in our ultra-low temperature freezer, we used -70. Now, why we use -70? One, you're saving 30% of energy by raising up the temperature. Also, for those who are using ultra-low temperature freezers, approximately €700 per year is saved on that, so it could be used for other things. But in fact, it's also part of what the My Green Lab group do is like a freezer challenge. So it's part of all this organizational things. And after this, we did a second survey, as independently as the last one, as Denitsa has elegantly described, and we reached a platinum certification at the end of that second survey.
I just would like to add a little bit more to the details Girish provided, and that is in the survey, interestingly, was not only questions purely related to research. There was also about lab culture. How do we travel to work? For example, when we have seminars, we do carpooling. How do we have our lunches? Is it one-time disposable ware, or do we have glasses and ceramic plates? Do we switch off our computers? Do we reduce heating over the weekend? So it was beyond just the pure research activities. And in that area, there's also great options to improve. It even contained questions, how do we go to conferences? If it's within Germany, do we take trains? So it's more global than, as I said, purely the lab work.
It does indeed sound really multifaceted what you explained. And I have, when looking it up to prepare, I have seen about the freezer challenge, and I was tempted to see if we can join the freezer challenge as well. And of course, you can be really proud of the improvements if you say that within such a short period of time, you already increased one level in this certification program. So I was wondering, Girish, you just said that you're officially the laboratory Green Lab officer. Did you do any specific training to qualify for that role? And how does it look on a daily basis? So what are your regularly tasks in this role as a Green Lab officer?
So part of being a My Green Lab officer is actually to go through an official training program. So there's an online training that they provide you under specific topic areas, from energy to engagement with public, to procurement, waste and water management, and finally, and this is of interest to you, Ann-Christin, green chemistry, which is something we don't per se do because we're a biological lab, but still I got trained in this area on a basic level, and more of it was to do with understanding each of these topic areas, what are the most energy efficient methods are in terms of managing the lab, also learning about the cycles involved in recycling schemes, and to also understand that certain companies do greenwashing. So you should be careful which companies you're involved with and how they do things. And there's quite a lot of public notice about this. What it also did, and this is something to complement what we described earlier in terms of our improvements, is it helped me create a sort of green lab guide for our users in the lab, which alongside our safety talk we do each year, such that everyone is aware within our facility of being green and sustainable. And what's quite interesting is because we have a very motivated culture within the lab, everyone is not just taking it seriously within the work they're doing, but also I think outside as well.
That's really fantastic. So going back to something you said earlier, you mentioned ACTs, where, if I'm correct, is environmental impact factor labels. And this is something that I've not come across before. So which information do they provide and how do they work in the daily lab life?
That is actually a very good question. And it's probably a topic area that you're interested in, Ann-Christin, because of being a chemist. So what does ACT stand for? It means accountability, consistency, and transparency. And it is all to do with the manufacture, transport, and energy usage of the specific material and also how it's disposed of. Certain companies are actually, such as Sigma and Thermo Fisher, are now actively using these ACT labels. And what it tells you is it tells you from the starting point of the chain, how much energy is being used, to then how much that material in terms of solvents is being used and whether any green chemistry is being indicated. And then finally, the company itself is on the labels now. So this is actually an ACT label 2.0, where the company has to actively state what schemes they're involved with. So are they part of net zeros? Are they part of these schemes to help reduce energy costs? So for instance, in our lab, we've gone from using solvents to dissolve certain chemicals to more water-based, because we know per se that's much more environmentally friendly. Although we don't act, but also this is very important because there's been recent inspections from the authority locally here where they even ask, are you using these different chemical replacement schemes, such as, for instance, Sigma millipore Dazone scheme, which basically you could put a chemical in and see what safer chemicals are. But also within DFG grants that myself and Denitsa are now part of, we can actually state we are a Green Lab certification, and this is something very important as well.
So that's really cool. Also constantly thinking about how to improve, but also to transport it to the outside to show people that it's something that has an impact and that is also improving research in the sense that you can do the same thing, but in a better way. After all these encouraging details that you presented, what's next for your lab? Do you know if other labs are planning to follow your path? Are you in direct contact? And what will be the next steps for your own lab?
So with Professor Shlomo Kemper, we already discussed how can we spread this information, how can we motivate, first in the Würzburg area, more laboratories to look into the certification process and assess themselves and improve thereby. And as a first step, we made a short article in the Einblick, which already got a good review for us. And second, we participated in the third week of November in 2025 in the seminar series Public Climate School in Würzburg with a symposium which was very successful, where we covered our data on the impact of orthopedics on the climate. We also reported on the certification process our department underwent. And as this seminar was open to our international master program, we will have a very curious lecture about how non-green are outdoor sports. And I think as a third step is today's podcast. And for the coming year, we're planning to do additional seminars. Maybe we could also offer the lectures available on our website. And at the end of today's podcast, I even have a greater global agenda. I'll come back to it.
With all these encouraging details in the back of our minds, and thanks Girish and Denitsa for describing the process with so much detail, I guess that our listeners, probably colleagues, co-workers, are curious. And I think, Girish, you already touched on this point. How transferable is the process that you went through? Is it specific to orthopedics? Is it easily transferable to chemistry? And what are also the costs and benefits of this certification process?
So, of course, our research area is orthopedics, but we're also a biological lab. So in a general sense, for biological labs, it's very transferable. But even more so, as I've just explained, one of the topic areas within the Mind Green Lab program is green chemistry. And actually, the survey is very dynamic. And what tends to happen is prior to embarking on the survey, our representative, which is Jack O'Grady, was very kind to talk to Denitsa and discuss which topic areas we'd be interested in. We included the green chemistry because we use a lot of chemicals for our work, but then the survey can be tailored to specific areas you're in. So they have also ones for clinical diagnostics, for instance, such as in hospitals, and they also have ones which are going to the more bigger pharma companies. So to give you an example of the survey we did, this is also being done by AstraZeneca, which is one of the larger companies, to our medium-sized laboratory here in KLH Würzburg.
And to come back to your question, benefit costs, let us start with the costs. So the certification actually is a small fee, I think about 500 euros per unit. And this is totally justifiable because you get an excellent reports after each survey with the detailed analytics, A, and B, they give you very concrete suggestions under all of the parameters in the survey of how to improve. Maybe the second cost is the investment of time, for example, in the training of Girish to be the Green Lab officer, or the time of the people took to take the survey. But these costs, I think, are minimal in versus benefit. And what is the greatest benefit? First, the awareness of the team. Then the motivation to really strive for paying attention to sustainability, for improving our sustainability agenda. And I think the greatest benefit is the achievement of mind shift. And then striving to keep the level, staying updated over the time. And for that, for example, under the great leadership of the Green Lab officer Girish here, we established in our department an annual dedicated meeting where we revisit the topics, where we actualize on the latest options to further on improve. And I think that is not one step, it's actually a process that will remain continuous.
Girish, could you say one thing about how long the process or this officer training actually took?
So it's actually an online survey. So there's 6 modules to it, and they each take around 2 or 3 hours. So it took me about a week to go through each one, but it depends how, if you want to do it all in one go, you could do it all in one go, you could do it over a month, and they are paid online, each survey.
Thanks to both of you. This was a really great discussion. I learned a lot, and it was really interesting to get insights into this process. And I'm also thanking you for sharing your perspective and your personal idea in the process. I think it would be cool to finish on a personal note on our respective perspective on sustainability and science. My green chemistry journey actually began when I was meeting Professor Seifert from the University of Mainz, who at the start of his presentation showed 2 slides on making people aware of the climate change and the consequences. He didn't spend much time. He just took 2 minutes from his science, but he made a real impact, and he started lots of discussions throughout the meeting that I attended. So after that, when I was starting a new position here at the University of Würzburg with a chance of designing my own concept and course, it was clear that green chemistry would be something that I would love to teach about. And since then, it's such a privilege interacting with so many inspiring people like the ones I have as interview guests today and who work to make the world a better place. And this, I think, is also where the power lies. So each of us, each individual can contribute. This is shown by my 2 guests today, but also by many other positive examples. So this is why I want to reach out and say to you, you can also be a positive example. And it's really cool. You can bring a new momentum to another person or an entire team or entire research unit. So go for it.
So I come from more the educational aspect because I'm the one who is both been educated in green lab and sustainability, but also someone who now feels a responsibility that I need to help others to also achieve their goals within this process as well. And just to add on, I can also provide the contact for Jack O'Grady to yourself and Christine, who will also be very happy to get you on board within their programs.
So, Anne, you mentioned the team, and here I would like to take a moment. I would like to thank our team for really supporting this and for being very active and very motivated. From the first meeting where I initiated the process, it was fantastically taken by the team, and without the team would haven't been able to achieve that. So thank you once again to each one of our team. I wanted to come back to one of my global ideas, and that is through the experience, and as I'm currently the president-elect of the World Organization, the so-called International Combined Orthopedic Research Society. I would like to have that in the time of my presidency, which will start in 2030, to really encourage and support the establishment of a global orthopedic research network on sustainable work and sustainable research agenda. So this is, I would say, rather a professional still perspective, but to come back to the personal perspective, as a mother of a 13-year-old daughter, I really like to cite a saying: we do not inherit the earth from our ancestor, we borrow it from our children. So I think we should start planting green ideas, green trees, because one generation plants the tree, another gets the shade.
With this strong personal perspective from Denitsa in the end, I think adding anything from my side would only dilute it. That leaves me to thank my 2 guests of today. I really enjoyed the conversation, learned a lot, and I appreciate that Denitsa and Girish shared both the small steps they took as well as their big ideas. Maybe this can inspire you to also plant a tree, to give someone else shadow in the future. Thank you so much for listening.